Our marathon continues, but it's been just an absolute privilege to share all these great speakers and great content with you all over the past 3 weeks. And I've got another great session in store for you coming up right now, and that would be the do's and don'ts of your content marketing strategy. And we've got a great plethora of discussion leaders here to help guide this discussion and really provide their insights from a multitude of different perspectives and some good takeaways for you and kind of thinking about or perfecting your content marketing strategies. So before we jump into the session itself, today's session is sponsored by our partners at Meridian Links, LendingQB. So I've got a quick video to air from them, about 60 seconds, and then we will jump right in.
LendingQB is the industry's leading browser-based mortgage loan origination software as a service solution. Equipped with proven digital services, including advanced technology, process automation, and a dedicated support staff, you'll deliver compliant loans faster. The Open API framework provides a flexible data integration hub for third-party systems. Instantly and easily connect with more than 250 industry partners, as well as over 300 service providers. Lend confidently with automated compliance integrations. Configure red flag notifications and hard stops with a configurable business rules engine. Prevent potential threats at any step of the loan process to remain safe and secure. Pre-configured, LendingQB is fully equipped to meet today's challenges. Eliminate manual workflows, automate calculation of fees, support third-party origination, helpful TPO portal, and so much more. Email us, call us, or visit us online.
Awesome. So thanks so much to our partners at LendingQB for sponsoring today's session. And on that note, want to jump right in here. As I mentioned, great set of discussion leaders with us today. First off, we've got Jennifer Waz, Vice President of Sales and Revenue Operations with TMC's exclusive media partner, Housing Wire. Hey, Jennifer.
Hi, Tom. Great to see everybody.
Likewise. And so for TMC member side, we have Melissa Wright, Executive Vice President of Production, Sales, and Marketing at American Pacific Mortgage. And hey, Melissa.
Hi, happy to be here.
We're happy to have you. And we've got a tag team from our great partners at Maxwell helping lead today's discussion. So we have Director of Content, Allison Leon. Hey, Allison.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And your moderator for today's discussion, he's going to take the reins away from me here, as I'm sure you're tired of seeing my face. So we've got Vice President of Marketing and Growth at Maxwell, Alan Paris. Hey, Alan.
Hey, Tom. How you doing?
Doing great. Well, great to kick things off. You guys are the star of the show, so I'm going to go away and I'm going to turn it over to Alan to guide us from here.
Awesome, Tom. Thanks. And first off, thanks to TMC for putting on this amazing 12 days of TMC event. It's been fun seeing how many sessions and the participation from everybody. Also want to thank all the lender members for joining the sessions, the preferred partners for making this all possible, specifically LendingQB. We at Maxwell have a good relationship with the people at LendingQB and a great group and a great company. So thanks for sponsoring this session as well. So today, this was a session that we put as an idea to TMC and some of the lender members voted on to have, and was humbled and honored by that. But really what we kept thinking about is, content marketing is a big thing we believe in at Maxwell. And it's something that, similar to what we said about social maybe 5 or so years ago, where everybody needs to be doing social, it's commonly something of everybody needs to be doing content marketing. And that, though, can be intimidating, confusing on where to start, what content marketing even means. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to provide a well-rounded panel of some content marketing experts to share what a person needs to be focused on in executing on a content marketing strategy. How should they be thinking about it? And ultimately what success is at the end of the day for whether content marketing is working for your company. So I wanted the panelists to give a quick overview of their background and their responsibilities to lay the stage of where kind of their focus areas are. Tom did a great job of sharing the titles, but wanted them to share a little bit about their background in content marketing, and then we'll jump on in. So Melissa, why don't we start with you and give a quick brief background on your history and your experience with content marketing.
Okay. So Melissa Wright with American Pacific Mortgage. I run our retail channel and also run all of our strategies for marketing. So I've been with American Pacific for 6 years. Prior to that, I had my own company for 18 years. So marketing has been everything since day one. Been in the industry for 23, 24 years, and it's always been about marketing. So I'll talk specifically about American Pacific Mortgage. We set strategies for what we're trying to achieve. We set goals and then specific strategies to hit those goals. And there's always things specific to content, because let's face it, we're in the mortgage business, and it is about there's so much information when it comes to mortgage. There's so much that the consumers need to know. They need to be educated by it. It's so important to give them that information. And so because of that, we kind of lead that out with content, making sure that we have fresh content every single month and value add for the consumers, because they're doing their shopping online. They're trying to learn, and they want to have a safe place to learn that online. And so we do push out a lot of information regarding mortgage, because I think that's our job as mortgage professionals, is to make sure that we clearly educate and give information out to the consumers. So I'm happy to share some specific things we're doing, but that's just kind of my overall thought of why it's so important.
Great. Allison, how about you?
Yeah, so as Tom was mentioning before, I work at Maxwell as the director of content. So I have been in the content world for many years, probably over 10 years at this point, and actually in the real estate space for more than 6 years, but not in mortgages specifically. So this is a bit newer to me. However, at Maxwell, I work with Alan on kind of owning every piece of the content marketing strategy. So that's anything from kind of researching audiences, setting buyer personas, and kind of mapping out content to address the questions that target audience has, increasing brand awareness, as well as paying attention to kind of buyers in the consideration space, and also the conversion element that content is a part of. And then beyond that, obviously tracking what's working, what's not working, and then testing quite a few different forms of media. So something that we're embarking on now is kind of trying things beyond written content. So I'm sure, as you all know, there's been a huge boost in interest around things like podcasts, video, visual forms of content. So we've been trying out different forms there, and just kind of seeing what works and what doesn't, and planning on, amplifying some of those mediums in the coming year.
Thanks, Allison. And Jennifer?
Yeah, absolutely. HousingWire obviously plays a unique role in the industry. I lead the sales team. I have been in media sales for, over 20 years now. I joined HousingWire about 4 years ago after spending 11 years at the Wall Street Journal. So have deep media, digital and content experience. And our role is really to help all different types of companies, from lenders to solution providers, really get their message across to the industry at large and to consumers for some portion of it. But it's really helping them achieve the goals, like both Melissa and Allison stated. You all have very specific goals and messages that you need to communicate. They're important to communicate. And our job is to help you do that and to give you a distribution platform that is quite possibly beyond your own database of people that you're nurturing, and help you add to that funnel. So we play a unique role, but content is a very important part of the piece of people's marketing mixes. We're here to support that and have a great team to do that. So I'm thrilled to talk about it today.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited to have all you participate. Thanks again for your help in putting this together. Also, it should have just shown up in the chat. If you have any questions throughout this presentation, we want to make sure we're answering what's important to you. So feel free to type over any questions in the chat box, and then Tom, the TMC crew, and myself will either fit them throughout the discussion, or we'll find some time at the end to answer those questions. So why don't we just jump right in? So, we said that content marketing is something that is talked about a lot. It needs to be a main pillar in your marketing strategy. Why is that the case? What are companies using content marketing for, and why does it add value in their strategy? Allison, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, when they think of content marketing, maybe if they're a little less familiar with it, they associate it kind of with that top of funnel brand awareness phase of the buyer journey, which it absolutely is helpful during that phase. But I would also argue, increasingly it's vital to marketing during all of the buyer journey phases. So, at the top of the funnel, you might look to attract new customers kind of with your pillars of content, whether that's new blog posts, thought leadership pieces. SEO is a great tool for that if you're able to show up, kind of in the search results for various terms related to your industry or business, kind of those traditional methods, as well as, social media. And then when you talk about consideration, there's also, many more opportunities to connect with your audience there. And I think content provides, this unique marketing opportunity to be able to kind of have this conversation with your customers and be able to build trust over time. So something that I see companies doing at this stage could be things like ebooks, white papers. If you're able to put kind of unique data out there, a little more robust forms of content, you could potentially look at maybe metering those behind a sign-up wall. And in that case, you're able to, capture email addresses, which is, this vital next step in being able to ultimately convert your leads into customers. Another great opportunity within this kind of consideration phase, I think, can be email. So looking at things like newsletters, something I subscribe to, like Moz Top 10. So I'm always trying to look at, what are the latest marketing tips, SEO articles. This is a newsletter I read often, and because Moz sends this over, I'm able to kind of associate with their brand a certain level of quality, of trustworthiness, of authoritativeness, that over time, if I'm looking for that kind of tool, I might automatically then turn to Moz as a provider for that tool. And it also just helps you keep top of mind with people who have already, they're already kind of expressing interest in what you have to offer. And then later on down the funnel, in order to really convert, that could be other emails that are more targeted towards an actual conversion with a CTA button, or you could identify more written content as, hey, if people are searching for this, if they're reading about this specific topic, chances are they really are interested in buying my service. So you might push a little harder in that piece of content surrounding actually syncing them up with that conversion. And then I would say lastly, a step that some people forget is that content can also be really valuable after the sale. So in order to retain your audience, really that delighting the customer point where, if you're doing it right, you're creating brand evangelists who are going to refer your service to other people. And this is kind of, the ultimate goal of marketing in certain ways. And I think you can do that through, again, really understanding who your customers are and their needs at that point in the journey. So if you're able to sync those customers up with continued value add content, continue to have that conversation with them, you'll just be very likely to have, a customer with high LTV who might tell their friends, hey, this is an awesome business, check them out.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you laid out there is that content marketing, so probably almost all companies are participating in content marketing today, whether they knew or not, because there's words that are trying to drive actions in their funnel. But it's happening in every stage of the customer acquisition and even customer retention. Melissa, how do you, if that's a case, like how do you identify where you should be focusing your time to improve? Like, should I be doing it for brand awareness? Should I be doing it for nurturing more of my current customers to become leads? How do you decipher that and figure out where you should put your resources?
So yes, it's all of that. So great information so far. We look at always having brand awareness running, because I think that's what builds trust. So you have to have a constant, consistent, I think is critical to be able to have information that's reliable, information that you give out to show who you are as a company. So for us, we're always going to be running things that you might interpret just to be brand awareness, because we need to show that we know our craft, that we have the information and we're willing to share that. And when we do that, sometimes we do that through free information, and sometimes we do it, we were talking about gated information is kind of how I call it, where you want to capture an email to be able to give out information. But I don't do that all the time. A lot of all my blog articles are free, and we push those out every single week. This year we're going to get into podcasting, and we're going to push that out. I do gate my ebooks we were talking about, but one of them I give out for free, and then I have 5 others that I gate. So it's kind of this mix of, you have to constantly build your brand as a company as one that they can rely on. And then we put our efforts into generating business for our loan officers and for our company. And that's a different strategy than building your brand. So I would say they both come together, and we're looking for what can we do to be that trusted lender that knows their craft. And then what things can I specifically give loan officers to help them with their customer engagement and help them with lead generation and new opportunities. So depending on the purpose would depend on how I want to attract that, how I want to gate that, how I want to create lead opportunities. But it is going to be both.
That's fantastic. And Jennifer, on the HousingWire side, how are lenders maybe specifically choosing HousingWire? Which one of those goals or targets are they typically using when partnering with HousingWire?
I would say it's both. I would say that there are different formats that are appropriate for different objectives and different goals. And that's one of the things that is critical, is to choose the format that meets your goal. I think Melissa made a really great point where you have to have that brand awareness. You have to build that trust with your reader, whether it's the homeowner, the borrower, or for Maxwell's case, it's the end user. It's the people who are going to be using your platform. They have to know you and trust you before they're going to believe or take to heart what you say in a piece of content. It could be the best written piece of content ever, but if they don't know you and they don't have a familiarity with your brand, then they're not going to take your advice. So I think that's something that's really important, is choosing the right format for what you're trying to accomplish and being consistent about it. I would say more often than not, people come to us for the lead gen part of it, but it is not always, it's not always about generating leads. You have to have content at all places in the funnel, and not all people are always ready to buy. Not always ready to buy a home, not always ready to sign into a new platform. So we have to make sure that we're giving them something before we ask them for something. And that is the need for the consistency in your content strategy. And that, I think, is both paid and owned. You definitely have to do both with blog posts and partners that are beyond your own own and operated. And that's sometimes where a player like HousingWire comes in, but it also can be that SEM, SEO type of thing where you're putting out your own content. But I think it has to be at all different phases, and you have to choose the right format for it to be successful.
Melissa, when you talked about that APM has a focus of brand awareness is always on, but then also different targets and specific goals on each of the other stages in the marketing funnel. Did you guys, so for a lender who hasn't done this before and wants to improve their marketing funnel, did you guys have one area that you focused on first, or was it more of, hey, we need to improve every step of the funnel, and thus we're going to distribute resources accordingly to solve each of these one by one?
So so the first thing you want to do is just make sure at minimum that you have a good online reputation. So depending on if you're starting or if you're just trying to elevate it. You need to have a really good online presence. So that might be making sure you've got a solid website that has good information, make sure you have social platforms. So when people search you out, what are they finding about you? And do you like what they're finding out about you? And if you don't, fill those gaps in. So maybe you don't want to do a weekly blog because that feels overwhelming, and where you're going to pull resources, that's okay. Just make sure then you have a really good website, and maybe you're just getting that information out on social. And it just depends. Maybe you do all of that and now you want to get more presence through video and building YouTube channels out. Maybe you're going to do that. But you just want to make sure first and foremost that when you think about as a company or yourself, how are you seen and found, and do you like it, and fill in those gaps. So then I shift over to generating business. How do we generate business for, and in our company, we use loan officers to do that. So I'm always thinking of what do they need? And the easiest way for me to do that is to come up with a monthly theme. And I have a monthly theme that talks to consumers. And then I build all the marketing around that for the month, and whether it be videos, whether that be blogging, whether that be flyers, social media posts, tips for them to use, PowerPoints. It kind of just depends on what we're doing, but I always do a theme for them to keep it really structured and really organized, because otherwise you just have a lot of stuff and nobody knows how to use it. It sounds good, like we've got all this stuff to work your client all the way through the funnel, but if they don't really understand like what to pull together and how to connect that, so that's where we found a winning formula, is to kind of come up with theme-based marketing, especially and just trying to keep it all organized. And even if they don't use it for the month, when they go back to find it later, it's all organized in that way.
I think you bring up a great point. One thing that I probably beat on this drum way too much, and if for anyone who's listened into any of our podcasts or something, but one of the things I love doing, I think it's a great time of the year, is I think many times when we're in roles in business, we forget that we're consumers ourselves. And I think looking at your process and thinking about, how did I purchase a complicated product or a high consequence product, gives you ideas of how you should be thinking about your flow and what stages are maybe missing. Like when I went to buy a car, I did a lot of research, and I, got trust with the brand by these instances that I interacted with them, and these things. Then you can look at your process critically. And I think this time of the end of the year is a great time to do that and say, where am I missing? Where are my gaps? And then go solve for those gaps. So I think it's I think helpful for many of us to get some fresh ideas, is remembering that we're consumers, and how do you build trust with it? What are the brands you love the most? How did they build trust with you? Can give you inspiration in your own business. So Jennifer, is there an opportunity for lenders to, I think in this day and age right now, a lot of it is attracting the right talent and finding the best underwriters, processors, loan officers. Yeah. There's always a war for talent out here. Is there an area for content to help solve that for lenders and to attract the best talent?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. I think that that's really a powerful way to attract talent. And we know that lending institutions, retail banks, independent banks, wholesale banks, they all are competing for this amazing talent. And we know that there is, they know that there is, if you're a high performer, they know that there's a war for you. And I think what people look for is, am I going to thrive? Am I going to be able to put in the same amount of work and be more successful? Am I going to be able to further my career? Am I going to be able to achieve my goals and objectives? So I think content is a really great way to communicate that, for lending institutions to communicate that and provide insight from the voice of employees that already work there. I think this is a great use for videos and testimonials and success stories from high performers that are already in their organization, so that people can see themselves working there. They can relate to what this person is saying. And I think content's a really powerful way to do that. And I think there's so many distribution channels now that make it easy to push out videos. Melissa mentioned YouTube. We all know that we can do videos on our phone now. And that's a totally acceptable way to do it. And I think it really resonates with people when they can see somebody that they relate to, somebody at the same age, somebody of a similar background, somebody in a similar career path, they say, oh, this person is like me. I want to echo that, their success. And I think content's a really powerful way to do that. It speaks so much more loudly than just a job announcement.
So we talked about, I think it makes a ton of sense on where content fits in the funnel and what role it has. For someone who is thinking about now and has been convinced that, hey, I need to improve parts of my funnel, how do they go figure out how many resources they need? Do they need to hire a team of 4 writers? Do they need to go get contract writers? Like, how do you go resource this effectively? Maybe we'll start with you, Allison, and then go to Melissa.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would suggest, even if you don't plan on building out a huge content program yet, I think it's really wise to start out with kind of what are your goals with your content program, and get really specific around that. Maybe even have some sort of, mission statement with your content. We want to provide X audience with X type of content to help, Y business goal. And in doing that, you'll make sure you're not just kind of putting content out there to do it. You're actually fulfilling a business goal by doing that. And then I would probably start with some sort of research phase where you're just kind of taking a look at, we touched on kind of buyer personas before, and maybe you already are collecting those through your sales division or elsewhere, which if so, awesome. Otherwise, you can collect kind of basic demographics through programs like Google Analytics, maybe your social channels if you're using those, or if nothing else, talking to a few of your customers and just really putting some life into kind of these personas you're building out, just to make sure you're taking kind of the focus off of the marketer and towards kind of the people you're marketing to. And then kind of with this basis, as well as maybe like looking at what competitors are doing and deciding, to what degree do you want to replicate that? You can start setting a framework around, kind of what resources you might need. And I know this might feel kind of maybe overwhelming at first and like a shot in the dark, but I think maybe the easiest way is to start backing into it. So if your goal is a certain amount of maybe touch points, overall reach, maybe you have some engagement metrics or sales metrics in there as well, you can start to make educated guesses around what the content will look like to achieve those goals. And in doing that, you're able to kind of back into, okay, this means that we need to publish X pieces of written content, including this many ebooks. We're going to try a video this month, and then you can ascribe kind of a cost related to that. As Alan kind of alluded to, this could mean finding resources within your own company, hiring someone on, or it could mean going kind of the contractor route. And that's really an individual decision. But, the bottom line being there needs to be someone who you're delineating as being kind of in charge of maintaining and producing the content, according to whatever publication or content calendar you're looking at. As well as, you'll need resources to measure the success and then to kind of also control the distribution plan. So something else you'll want to look at when allocating resources might be, when we're distributing, what does that mean to us? We can go kind of the free route of putting it onto social channels, of doing our own emails, but kind of as Jennifer was saying earlier, this might also mean, hey, let's spend a little money towards getting it onto a platform, maybe like Housing Wire, where we can, really push it to this wider audience and help get our program off the ground and bring our touch points up to, where that goal is. Could also mean paid search or paid ads, something like that.
Melissa, how about you?
So I want to specifically touch on what you were asking about building the team versus outsourcing the team. And so I was thinking about, like, if at minimum, you're going to need at least one person on the team that knows the brand, that knows the overall objectives. I think that's key. Now, depending on the size of your organization and the budget you have for staffing, you can increase from there. But you can absolutely do it with one person who knows the objectives, sets the strategy, knows the brand, and can monitor that, and you can outsource the rest. There's so much out there for resources and freelancers that are uber talented that you can tap without the stress of hiring people. And maybe that's not your forte. Maybe you don't know marketing. And so you don't even know how to interview to find the right skill set for that person. I mean, that could be the case as well. So I would say just find one. That's all you need to start. And then you can outsource. We're a big organization and we outsource a lot of our writing, more the editing side, but I mean, plenty of people can write, but we even do that. We outsource a lot of video work because it's there's just so much talent out there. And then instead of having someone full-time on your payroll, that might be tricky, you can find the talent. So I would say have someone that's running I'll repeat this again, the brand, knows the brand, whether it be your brand as a loan officer or an individual or your brand as a company, but have someone that's your right hand, knows it, knows the brand.
Did we lose Melissa, or is that just me?
No, I think we had Melissa freeze up for a moment. The beauties of technology in 2020, and there she is.
There she is. She's back.
You guys, I'm back. My internet came back and then I turned it off. So yes, did you hear any of that?
Yeah. So where you stopped was finding someone. You have to find someone who knows the brand and to own it. And the rest, it seems like contract work and finding talent, freelance talent can solve the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just don't be overwhelmed by hiring a big team, I guess is my message. You don't have to. You can find the talent out there. If you're willing to go all in and build a robust, in-depth marketing team, then you're going to want to make sure you have people who are writing. You need people who know digital. You need to, there's like all the different roles. But I would say it's not necessary. You really could outsource, especially if you're trying. Right now, if you want to try some new strategies before you go all in hiring, you could outsource, do some work with some individuals, and then try that. If it works, then make a decision on the expense side. Is it more financially responsible to outsource it or hire for it? But try it out first because there's tons of resources.
Great. I want to answer some of the questions that have come through. So there's two very similar questions that I think we can maybe merge into one. So one question is, have you seen a type or style of content in your strategy that's been more successful than others? And the examples were, video tutorials, brochures, blog posts, et cetera. And then there's also a question around what's been the most impactful, and this is more probably channel in the organization, whether that's paid or sponsored versus free content on social media. So if one of you is the most passionate, I'll let you guys decide who wants to answer that question. But so it seems like there's a question around what's the most impactful channel, and then what's the most impactful maybe type of content or media.
I can jump in on the channel because I certainly think that there's a time and a place for both. I think that your owned and operated and your social play a very important piece in continuing to nurture your prospects, nurture people who want to know and become much more familiar with your company. And those enthusiasts, Allison talked about them earlier, current customers, those are the people that are going to be in your world, following you on social media. They're going to be the ones that are going to be in your database. They might receive your email newsletters or your blog posts, be frequent readers of your blog posts. I think where the paid content comes in is when you want to expand beyond the people who you know who they are and they know who you are. The paid part comes in when you're looking for new people. And that's not necessarily only at the top of the funnel. It certainly is a top of funnel play most often, but it is casting a wider net to increase those people and help you push them down the funnel. So I think there's a time and a place for both, but both are definitely necessary.
And I think that's a great theme as well in thinking about content marketing is you got to think about not only putting out amazing content, but then also how you're going to get it in people's eyes, ears, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes missed a lot of times. Like people put this amazing piece together, but then they have no idea of how they're going to get it in their audience's hands. And developing your piece, knowing, hey, we're going to use this as a paid piece to drive new interest in our company, that's a completely different strategy than, hey, we've got 1,000 people subscribe to us on LinkedIn. We need to nurture those people to become customers. We're going to develop a blog post for that goal. So I think that's something just to keep top of mind in your strategies. Think about how you're going to distribute your content and what channels are going to use to reach your target audience, rather than just all your effort on an amazing content piece.
Right. And I think your expectations of results have to be different by the channel that you're choosing and the audience that you're expecting to reach with those channels. I mean, you're going to get a different result from your social media post than you are from a paid post. You're going to get a different result from people who know you, that are your current customers, from those that are just meeting you for the first time.
Agree. Allison, Melissa, anything to add on there?
I actually wanted to comment on something Jennifer said about, about like how much time you spend on a piece. So it's really interesting because we'll look at that, like how much time did we spend on a blog article, for example, and we put a lot of really good information, timely information, relevant information. And it's like, well, I don't want that just lost in my blog history. So I might specifically take that one because I know it has a lot, and I'm going to pay that one out there and use it in different ways. And I might throw it on my website as like a link within a page in a website, and I'm going to pay that, and I'm going to link it up to other blogs. Like, there are things you can do to get a further reach, but I love what you said about you spend a lot of time on it. Focus on that. If you spend a lot of time on a book or a blog, some really good information that you want to get out, you're going to want to find a lot of different ways to get that out there, not just one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And kind of what I would add to the overall conversation around kind of, let's use this piece of content to expand our overall kind of like reach to new customers or new potential leads. I don't think it's like a question necessarily of if you're going to, put some spend behind it, maybe put it in a sponsored publication or do an ad for it, or going kind of the organic route. Just where we are with Google and SEO, Google doesn't just look at, hey, does this contain the correct keywords? It is incredibly smart at this point, and it's looking at, are people engaging with this piece of content? If so, we're going to deem it high quality, and we're going to show it to more people. So if you really are pursuing that kind of organic traffic strategy, it can be very smart to put some spend behind your kind of highest bet pieces when they first are published. So you're giving it the best bet at kind of like ranking within search engines.
Great. All right. So time has flown by. We're 38 minutes in, probably have another 7 or so. So I want to do a little session around what this topic session's name is, which is the do's and don'ts of content marketing. So maybe we'll start in the order of my Zoom screen. Jennifer, if you could go and say the 2 do's and the 2 don'ts of content marketing, what would they be?
Okay. The 2 do's would be use quotes in your content. And when you're using your executive leadership team, don't add marketing speak to their quotes. Let their voice come through. Sometimes when marketers get a hold of an executive quote, they're trying to kind of smooth it out, make it sound and fit into the article perfectly. And sometimes that loses the impact. So let your leaders have a voice. The second do would be thought leadership should be the main focus. Subject matter expertise is the reason for content. Talking about your product or your company is going to fall flat. Provide information, provide useful knowledge that people can put into their decision-making process, and it will work out much better, and the piece will be much more interesting to read. We have a kind of rule of thumb of if it's not fun to write, then it's not fun to read. So think about that as you're putting together your piece. Did you want to do my don'ts also?
Yeah, let's go don'ts too.
Okay. Don't have too many people edit or comment on your piece as you're going through the process. Same thing, the waters get muddy and it ends up kind of a bland piece. You have too many different perspectives. So try to keep that for a minimum. It's always great to get other people's input, but limit how much control they have. And then the second don't, I have to look at my notes here. The second don't is it needs to be current and relevant. Be cognizant of what's going on in the industry a little bit outside of your day-to-day. We all are so focused on what we do, but be cognizant of what's going on in the industry so it resonates, and understand what your audience cares about. And sometimes that's not your corporate milestone. It needs to be something that's useful to them, not useful to you. This is for their benefit, not for yours. There's a time and a place to talk about your corporate milestones. Content when you're trying to drive business or recruit people or educate borrowers, not the time to talk about your milestones.
Great. Allison, how about you?
All right. Do number one, I have be intentional. So we hear a lot about how noisy the content space is, and that's absolutely true. And the bottom line just being, it's not beneficial to anyone, for your brand, for your audience, if you're just publishing content kind of for the sake of it. So this goes back to kind of having that strategy. And I would really recommend making it kind of a living document that you're referring back to, that you're changing over time according to, what's working, what's not, your business needs, and just really putting intention behind the content efforts you're making to really make them work for you. For number two, I have enter into the content game without ego. So I think it's really easy to become attached to certain ideas, especially if you're the one kind of ideating what the content will be about. If you're writing the content, it can feel really personal. So if that falls flat, you may, just kind of want to bulldoze through and not take that to heart. But it's really about kind of thinking like a scientist. So test, what might work, what might not for your audience, especially when you're starting out, and just follow the metrics. It's certainly not personal, and eventually you'll come up with that formula that works for your target audience. For don't, I have don't be afraid of non-written forms of content. So I know this can be intimidating, and kind of to Melissa's point, I think it can be great to go at this with kind of, hey, we can use contractors who have this skill set, since it's not kind of one of our core competencies, and really use your resources wisely there. But some statistics being like 40% of Americans listen to podcasts. I think next year it's projected that the average American will spend 100 minutes a day watching online videos. So it's really staggering numbers. If kind of one of a marketer's goals is to capture attention, this is where people are paying their attention. So I think it's worth at least testing. These aren't mediums that are going to go away. And then lastly, I have, don't forget you're a human talking to other humans. So this is similar to kind of what Jennifer was saying, if it bores you when you're creating it, it's going to bore other people. Just because you're in kind of a more professional industry, just because you're in finance, it doesn't mean it can't be engaging or interesting in some way. I think this is where, brand tone and voice really come into play. How do you want to speak to people? What's engaging to them? What will really help them be interested in your content and ultimately, take action?
And Melissa, we'll finish with you.
All right, awesome tips so far. So I kind of had to adjust my list a little bit, but let me just start with you do have to have a brand. You need to have an identity, who you are and how you want to show up, and then you have to be consistent with that. So pick what you want to do for content. Pick what area you're going to focus on. You don't have to do it all. Yes, all of it works to some degree, but pick what you want to do and do it over and over and over again, because it's a long play. This isn't a short, I'm going to try a blog and did I get a loan out of it? Like, you're building identity, you're building trust, you're building an audience, and you've got to do that. But you got to first kind of know who you are. So I'd say start with a brand and then be consistent with whatever you choose to do. And then I would say with your information, don't always gate it. I don't think it's necessary for every marketing piece you do to make sure it's like, nope, you don't get it unless we know who you are. And that will deter people. And so there's a time and a place for that, but don't gate all your information. And with that, I would say, and then don't overwhelm. I love the tip, it's humans talking to humans. don't overwhelm. Mortgage talk can be really overwhelming. And we've spent a lot of time really thinking through, does the consumer even know what that means? Like, we're so easy to write mortgage talk like ourselves, like everybody gets it, and they don't. Don't talk in acronyms. Don't overwhelm. Keep it simple and keep it really effective and consistent.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a good ending spot. Really want to thank all the panelists for sharing some of your wisdom and your expertise with the audience. Hopefully this was valuable for everybody. And thanks again to TMC, LendingQB, all the lender members and preferred partners for helping put this together. So Tom, I'll throw it back to you.
Well, thank you, Alan, and Allison, Jennifer, Melissa, thank you all. I mean, the content, speaking of the buzzword for the day, extremely insightful to our attendees. And I was sitting here rapid fire in real time, kind of sharing each of your do's and don'ts on the Hooba chat stream so that our attendees can have them back as a takeaway. So quick reminder here, session has been recorded and will shortly be uploaded into the Hooba browser stream. So it will be accessible on demand for our attendees up to 60 days after the end of 12 days of TMC. So quick programming note as we wrap up, we're going to be starting our final industry keynote of the day at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. So there's going to be an interview featuring Redfin CEO Glenn Kelman, and it's sponsored by our partners at Ignite Integration Solutions. And hope you guys will come back and join us for the kickoff of day 12 tomorrow. Really excited about our last celebrity keynote. National hero from the Miracle on Ice team in the famous Disney movie. We've got Micah Ruzioni with us from the 1980 U.S. Hockey Olympic team, and it's sponsored by our partners at Certified Credit. So, gang, really appreciate, again, just the time and the effort that you guys put together. Melissa, for, putting together great content on the fly, having to use the phone internet connection. You guys are true pros. And I know on behalf of TMC, we really appreciate all the content and great information you provided today.
Thanks for giving the opportunity, Tom. I'm happy to do it.
Absolutely.
My pleasure. We all take care and be safe.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.